Okay, well, obviously I'm in the car again, and this is the first preparations video, so my apologies for the situation, but I really have been busy. I've got 3 dogs in the car who are being nice and quiet, except for Bodhi, who, because of her condition, often feels like she's overheated even though she's not. So she's panting in the background, and my apologies for that, but I'd rather hear it than not. This will be episode 2, which of course doesn't have a title, and we're going to start playing in about 15 minutes or so, and so here we go. What do I have planned? Well, as with all previous episodes, I'm just planning or preparing the initial situation. So I'm going to advance time a little bit. It will be a few months later, and the Avicenna has been very busy. I had mentioned at the beginning of Questions of Duty that they had been diverted from dealing with a famine. So after the events in the Helena system are resolved, they are of course sent back into that duty, that ongoing famine relief. So they've been working and struggling for months. Once they have completed that mission, then they are diverted to Starbase 11 for a few reasons, primarily among them R&R. So what is the situation? They are at Starbase 11, and there'll be opportunities for teaching newer recruits specific skills for this new aid and relief mission profile, and there will be opportunities for learning, and there'll be opportunities to be on Starbase 11. So it's very much open for character-directed activity. Right? Now, the players have demonstrated the ability to be very proactive, and they've also demonstrated a proclivity to be open to being reactive, to finding out what the game master's contribution is to the fiction, right? So by not having the temptation to lure them toward different depths of that starting situation, right? Remember in episode 1, the situation was find the ship, but there are many layers. There were physical layers like go searching, and there were political layers like find out why things might have disappeared. There were all these different layers to that one basic setup of the search and rescue. In this situation, what I want is there to just be a situation. You are in a place. Right. So what's so special about Starbase 11? Starbase 11 is where we know that Commodore Stone, who we meet in the episode Court Martial, is stationed. And Commodore Stone, I didn't initially have him in mind, which is why I didn't name the Commodore in any of the previous episodes. I didn't initially have him in mind to be in charge of this new aid and relief thing, but after watching Court Martial again during the middle of the pilot, it started to feel to me like he was an ideal sort of officer. Politically minded, career oriented, politically minded, and a good role model for that branch of service, right? The upper echelons of command. I think we can have quite a bit of respect for Commodore Stone. So, because he's an iconic character, and because of what we can see of as his political acumen and drive, then being part of setting up this, what I perceive of as a new division, not division, but anyway, new mission in Starfleet might be something that would appeal to that kind of officer, and in order, to push for the next promotion and that sort of thing. He does consider rank to be important. He does give other talented officers the advice of, think about your career, and so I find that interesting. So this will give me an opportunity to explore the political connections of Ensign Yang. So there are certain conditions about Starbase 11, right? There are going to be things that are happening on Starbase 11. Things I probably don't have to worry about fleshing out completely in this first session. But it's not there's only one thing happening. Starbase 11 is, on a planetary body. It's not a space station. It's not that kind of starbase. So, it's a large base. They'll have repair facilities. They have training. They have a large civilian population, and that sort of thing. So there are many things going on, and so crew exchanges, training, and the opportunity for there to be a political meeting between representatives of the Federation and representatives of the Gorn hegemony. Right, we're going to bring that thread back in because it's in there as one of the establishing cornerstones of the campaign. We could have any original series alien species in there, like new species of the week kind of thing, but that doesn't match up with some of the things that I'm interested in. Like, there's no reason to introduce the Gorn in the pilot if they're not going to factor in. And so we've seen them as a threat. The pilot episode closes with them being forceful. So let's see them in a different light. Let's explore more of the Gorn. So they are there, and Ensign Yang's family is there as the contingent of diplomats, and Ensign Yang will have the opportunity to conduct training of Academy cadets and undergo training should he choose. And what are we going to do with Korsakov? Well, with Korsakov, and to a lesser extent Ensign Yang, we're going to introduce the notion of Stian Anders, right? The captain that we never got to really see, that was relieved of duty by Tillich. Well, he wants his command back. He is in the last stages of being certified fit for command. All right. What's going to happen with Tillich? Tillich, just to allow greater room for our characters to be main characters, I'm going to continue on with the conceit of the crew exchange. And so we had Jim coming to the Avicenna to be the chief medical officer, and we're going to now have that favor returned. So Jim and Tillich have transferred to an Andorian Starfleet vessel for this episode. I'm not writing Tillich out of the campaign, but this is just an episode where that character is not going to appear. Okay, and that's it. That's the entirety of the setup. So Starbase 11, the Gorn. There's a Gorn diplomatic contingent visiting, being met by a Federation diplomatic contingent, which is being led by Ensign Yang's family. Meanwhile, hearings are concluding for Stian Anders to regain command of the Avicenna. Okay, that's what we have. And so I'm almost home, and I need to end the recording. And it's fascinating that I managed to get through it without a whole lot of noise, and we did get to see Buddy, which is nice. And from time to time, I think you saw Grace pop up over my shoulder. So it'll be fun to look back on this video in a few years. Anyway, until session 2, take care. Okay, this preparation video should be short. One of the guiding principles for preparation of this particular episode, which now that we've played one session, a title has come to me. The title will be Court of Opinion. We'll see if that remains relevant throughout, but I have a nice feeling about that title. But one of the purposes of Court of Opinion is to vastly minimize, to significantly reduce the layers of preparation for not preparation, the layers of possibility inherent in the opening situation. So if we think about the pilot and everything that entailed, we see that there are many, many layers. As simple as the premise was, the amount of information encoded into that premise was, was pretty deep. There was a lot of things for the characters to possibly get into. There was very little that they had to get into, but there was a lot that they could get into. And I feel that, the players sensed all of this depth of, it's not really complexity, but all of this all of the open avenues to explore in that environment. I felt that they sensed it, and it had an effect on play. In the second episode, the premise was even simpler, and there were fewer elements that needed to be introduced. In fact, there were no elements that needed to be introduced, unlike the pilot, which had connecting with the idea of the Romulans are out there and are threatening, and the Gorn are out there and are mysterious. And there's an alien artifact on board, and the captain was relieved of duty, and all of these things that were essential in the pilot are simply not present in Questions of Duty. It's search and rescue. However, the complexity, and complexity it is, comes in with the actual setting, borrowed as it is from an episode. It comes with a wealth, again, of opportunity to explore different aspects or elements of that environment. And it comes with suggestions and hints. And so if you're familiar with the episode, it begins to, color your thinking and, again, open doors of possibility, different vectors. So this time, what do we have? We have Starbase 11. The Avicenna has been directed there for R&R after a grueling, unplayed mission dealing with famine relief. This was a mission that they were headed toward in the previous episode and redirected to the actual episode just as color. So we are imagining that took place, that the crew is exhausted, that the crew has deserved a rest, and Starbase 11 is, in a sense, the home port of the Avicenna. Still no sign of the refit and that sort of thing. Now, while most of the crew will be on R&R, our main characters have other things going on. Ensign Yang learns very, very quickly that his parents are on Starbase 11 and that they have, big plans for the Gorn contingent, which is also visiting Starbase 11, having returned the rescued survivors from the pilot of the USS Potemkin. So that means Ensign Yang's brother, Lieutenant Joshua Yang, is also present. And Ensign Yang had an opportunity to be noticed by the politically minded in Starfleet, and that did not go very well. So the elements that pertain to Ensign Yang are that in the background there are diplomatic negotiations going on which bring his parents into the scene. Will he or will he not seek them out? And the specific situation thrown at him is this training opportunity that he has for young, very ambitious cadets. And the kind of, in a sense, complication, that the twist put into the episode is that he meets his brother. And now I have done everything that I wanted to do in terms of introducing things for Ensign Yang. And the reason why I introduced him, as I said, is because I want more Ensign Yang, not more Ensign Yang flying things, because I think that that's going to present itself often enough during the campaign, but Ensign Yang interacting with people. So now the ball's in his court, right? There are, his parents are over here, actually, right there in that in that dome, that circular penthouse, and his brother is there and not seeming either healthy or well. What's he going to do about it? Also, his friends on the crew are there on R&R. What's he going to do about that? So I'm looking forward to seeing what is he going to do about that. Korsakov, on the other hand, had a grievous injury in the previous episode, and we have imagined, several months of adaptation to his new life circumstances. And we open up with him beaming down to Starbase 11 to a medical appointment where he will be better fitted with his prosthetic limb. Now, I didn't know in which direction we would end up going. I didn't know what the dice would contribute to this situation. I didn't know what the player would decide. And I like what arose from play. I like the suggestion that came to me about, will he or won't he try to revive the horribly damaged leg that received disruptor fire, or will he instead embrace the idea of a prosthetic leg? And what would that really entail, and how accomplished would the medical crew aboard the Avicenna be for that kind of operation, and what sort of material would they have on hand to make it happen? And so all of that kind of took shape in play, and that's now a factor of play. Korsakov, however, the situation that's being thrown at him is that he's been asked to provide testimony at a hearing for the former captain of the Avicenna. And this is intimately tied with Korsakov's backstory about the alien artifact and other things, just like the situations facing Ensign Yang are tied in with his rough time at the academy and his political connections. So the trial is still ahead of Korsakov. So how I'm seeing how the episode is going is that we used our resource of time to zero in on Ensign Yang in the first part of this episode in session A. And as session B comes nearer, as it comes into focus, we'll be using that resource of time to look at Korsakov and this trial. And then again, Ron will be in the exact same position that KC is in of, well, these things exist. These things have the character's attention on Starbase 11. What are you going to do about it? And then that's it. So on the surface, it may seem like a lot of things are being thrown at the characters, but um, they are intended to just give Starbase 11 some life, give it some import, give it some connection um, to Starfleet, to the Federation, to the life of the crew of the Avicenna, and that sort of stuff. So it doesn't seem empty. So it doesn't seem like it's only occupied by Commodore Stone and whatever else. So this is a place out on the frontier that's important, where you could have trials of major import, where you could have meetings with other galactic organizations and the like. So as far as preparation goes, that's it. I can trust in the dice to provide us some interesting outcomes, whether they be tremendous successes or complications or outright failures. And I can trust in the players to be proactive in terms of their mission. Well, their mission is to be on Starbase 11. So we'll see what that actually means. Okay. I don't know, as usual, how much life this particular episode will have in it. I'm imagining, because of the structure, episode A focusing on Ensign Yang, episode B focusing on Korsakov, I'm imagining that there'll be an episode C, not episode session C. But we'll see.
I did not make a video talking about my preparation for session C, the third session of the Court of Opinion episode, because one simply wasn't necessary. Although an awful lot of weight, an awful lot of things that mattered happened both in Part C and Part B, there was nothing that I needed to prepare for my involvement in that hadn't already happened. We knew where we were, and we knew what kind of environment it was. So even if players had decided to go someplace, it's Starbase 11, and we've had several places described based on the images of those locations from the original series, and so we can extrapolate from those images what the rest of Starbase 11 must look like. So if any of the characters had decided to go to a different bar or to a restaurant or to somebody's room or to a transporter station or whatever, improvisation can play the same role as preparation there. It's just a matter of when you do it, right? So that didn't need to be done. New characters didn't need to be invented that needed any kind of detailed stats or talents or any of those things. So in terms of sitting down to do preparation, none of that was necessary. What my preparation amounted to was simply thinking over what happened, and did I remember everything that happened. Going through the edit of Part B serves as my review process, so I end up seeing each section multiple times as we go through, putting in sound effects or inserting clips of the Avicenna doing something or whatever. But so preparation was simply to be aware, to be up to speed with what happened, what was said, what plans or intentions were indicated, that kind of stuff. And also to pay attention to the feel, the mood. And that's why there's a video for Part D. I'm doing this video because things seem to be closing in or coming to a head, ready to boil over, approaching climax, however you want to phrase it. Things seem to be happening in a way that feels like the end of an episode. Now, this is not saying that this fourth part will be that end. We're probably being programmed by repetition to expect that each episode will have 4 parts. The pilot had 4 parts. You know, previous episode had 4 parts, and this one feels like it's ending, so this one's going to have 4 parts, and that might influence someone to say, you know what, let's just make them all have 4 parts, and then we lose a lot of the free nature of play. I didn't go into the pilot expecting it to have 4 parts. I thought it might have 2. And I didn't, I chose to end it around the 4 episode mark because everything that needed to be introduced was introduced, and there was, you know, a way to resolve it. The episode dealing with questions of duty came to a pretty natural end in 4 distinct parts. Well, this one, although it feels like the end is near, the end is nigh. What actually happens in play may take a lot of time, right? Either Korsakov or Yang or both might end up, you know, going somewhere and, you know, delivering an argument or getting involved in some other kind of debate, right? And that kind of role play may end up taking a long time. If it's handled in one of the 2 primary ways that we have seen in the campaign so far, the more common way that these things have been handled does take a significant amount of time. So we may have some really intense scenes, and it may, you know, push off the actual conclusion to the episode beyond the point where we have enough time to play, right? I think the most we can expect to have available is 2 hours. So there's that. If it turns into combat, or if it turns into some other kind of action scenario, either at the instigation of the players or because, you know, the spirit moves me to use threat to make that happen, particularly if what Anders wants, or what the controlling entity in charge of Anders wants, if that continues to be balked, or if the reward of continuing along this path doesn't merit the use of resources and time, then it may strike me that the better approach from this controlling entity's point of view is, you know, to change direction and turn it more into some kind of action, depending on the situation that we're actually in when that realization occurs. So all decisions being rooted in character means that, not that we have distinct plans of, in case of A, do X. It means that we know what the characters want. And if it looks like what they're doing can get them what they want, then they're going to keep doing what they're doing, right? So that the trial will continue. Anders will continue to play along as a good member of Starfleet, a good human, and that sort of stuff. But if it looks like Korsakov is too smart, is too prepared, is anticipating too many of their gambits, then really that charade, while it would be nice to have, you know, Starfleet on your side, you know, putting you back in the command chair of the starship, it ultimately might not be necessary. One of the things we know from the original series is that ships of this type, ships capable of these speeds, there aren't very many of them in any given sector. So, if they need to do something like hijack the Avicenna, or the Potemkin for that matter, then can they realistically be stopped before they can get up to the kind of hijinks that they want to get up to? So on my mind are, what, now that the Anders material is well and truly in the forefront, right? I've got all of this threat. I certainly can't spend all of it, and I certainly can't spend all of it in an engaging way by raising the complication range, right? 2 points, 2 points, 2 points will be here forever. But I can do things like I have already begun to do in Part C, bringing in reinforcements, establishing these characters, these threats. Anders has a group of people around him, and they are sending, signals via body language and facial expression that Korsakov knows that he's on the outs as far as this group is concerned. They don't respond to his polite overtures. The only one who seems to be at all friendly is Anders himself. Then there's the situation with the missing artifact. Now this is something I tried out. I was thinking, because of previous conversations about how much conflict seems like too strong of a word right now, but how much interaction of a serious nature could there really be with the supporting cast, such as in Balance of Terror. This was our first main example. We have obvious racism and things like the Corbomite maneuver. We see this as well. The fear, the xenophobia, or racism, and or speciesism, and the mistrust, and spies could be everywhere, kind of thing. This how much of a role could this actually play in Star Trek Adventures, right? And do we want it? Is this something that we would embrace? And how could it be decided? Would this be a game master prompt or something along those lines? So to test drive that idea, we have the idea of Jane Finch being compromised. She is affected by, just naturally as herself, she's loyal to her former captain, to the notion of her former crew, to the ideals that they held, to their history together. And because of the scandals surrounding Anders, she has lost a lot of that. She's lost so much of it that she's leaving Starfleet. Right? This has been her thread throughout. She no longer engages in shipboard life. She's withdrawn from this. She's withdrawn from that. She doesn't do this. She doesn't engage with these people, right? And she's leaving Starfleet. Although all the other crew members that are described as being lifers, long-termers, turning down promotions to stay on the Avicenna, that kind of thing. So she's the ideal candidate for this. So I assign her a complication, right? The complication is put on her with threat, and it represents the manipulation of Anders and the being controlling Anders, right? So this is our hint about what these creatures can do, the things that Tillich noticed and was able to resist because of his Kolinar training. So she is given this command, let's say, to get the artifact. Well, we put that in the hands of the players, right? Ron played Jane Finch, was told about the complication, and they role-played through trying to get it. And he tried really hard to get it and was ultimately put in a position where Jane Finch gained access to Korsakov's quarters. And then we cut away from Jane Finch. We took her out of the player's hands. And in the role of Korsakov, Ron and KC in the role of Embuto learn that the artifact is missing. But what does that actually mean? So one of the things that I have in mind is I want to give Korsakov the opportunity to worry in character. I want to see if KC is interested in bringing Yang into this series of events. So he'll have the opportunity to engage in that way, or do something other. There's lots of things that he could do. He can engage with the cadets who done him wrong, or he could, help support a fellow crew member in need. So, in terms of preparation of things like scenes, they will have the opportunity again to play Jane Finch. And will she or won't she turn the artifact over to Anders and company? Right? Jane Finch is a supporting character. She's not an NPC. She's not mine to direct. Anders is. Using Anders, I place the complication on Jane. I put Jane in their hands, and they play her and have her do what she does. She doesn't confide in Anya, right? She conforms to the compulsion, but we don't see her trying to break it. So we're, once she actually is in Korsakov's quarters, once she's actually in a position to steal the artifact, maybe that will cause some kind of different behavior. So these are some of the things that are on my mind. I'm not planning for a combat. I kind of hope one happens, because that seems kind of Star Trek-like to me. But what I'm imagining is two outcomes to prepare for in the sense of preparation. One, the trial, the hearing, whatever you want to call it, goes badly for Korsakov. And so Anders will just stay the course. And, if everything works out, regain control of the Avicenna. But if Korsakov, who is, quite well situated to do well in the hearing, does well in the hearing, then it's time for Anders to make a decision about stealing the Avicenna or stealing the Potemkin. The odds are higher for the Potemkin because more of the crew, are affected by Anders. So that's something to think about. And then what does that mean? And what does that mean in relation to bringing the episode to an end, right? So would that feel like a conclusion, or would that instead feel like, the beginning of the end, right? The last few moments of the episode packed with tension? I have no idea. As far as Ensign Yang is concerned, separately, the cadets, his parents, his brother, there's a lot of threads. So he doesn't in any way need to get tied up in the whole Anders, Korsakov, Embuto thing. He can have his own tragic adventures all by himself. So it's kind of a good place to be in, and not worrying about trying to bring the episode to a close in this particular session. It does make me a little uncomfortable, because like I've said before, if they go on too long, then it just starts to feel like campaign play without that episodic structure. But the counterpoint to that is that the number of sessions should not dictate the events. So that's where we're sitting with preparation. Some of the ways that I might have the opportunity to describe Anders and his cronies will put people in mind of a particularly weird episode with an ancient race and ancient technology and inscrutable goals and the manipulation of innocence and all that stuff. And it should put you in mind of it, because I'm drawing on it intentionally. And all I have to say on that point is, hail, hail, fire and snow.